Okay, so welcome everybody. We are going to spend the next about 30 minutes just going through a variety of different topics that are intended to help you with your project. And I'm going to share my screen with you, and Frank will get us started for today. So,
Uh-oh.
Go ahead, Frank.
Before we begin with our prayer, let's keep in mind the victims of the plane crash in the Ukraine. And with that, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Dear God, grant us an abundance of your wisdom. Prepare our hearts to be kind and gentle to each and every one of our students. Give us grace as we help students who aren't thriving. Courage to say what needs to be said. Tools and knowledge on how and when to speak love, and strength when they feel weak. When we feel unseen, help us to remember that no moment goes unnoticed, that we are shaping the future in 1 million small yet incredible important ways every day. Help us to remain conscientious enough to keep our lessons always interesting, to recognize what motivates each of our students, but most of all, Lord, help us to show your love to all our students. Amen. And if you join me in making our land acknowledgement,
We are gathered on the ancestral lands and waters of all indigenous peoples who have left their footprints on Mother Earth before us. We respectfully acknowledge those who have walked on it, those who walk on it now, and future generations who have yet to walk upon it. We pray to the Creator for strength and wisdom, that all may continue to serve as stewards of the earth. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick overview of the agenda for this webinar. We've already gone through a welcome and a prayer and the land acknowledgement. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking you through the reporting template. Kevin is going to talk to you a little bit about the experiential learning cycle, and more importantly, he's going to be going through the spending guidelines for the project. He'll be talking a little bit about spending parameters, how to process invoices, and the spreadsheets. We're going to invite Louisa Coquim in to join us as well. He will be your main contact in terms of some of the financial pieces of it, and then I'll sort of wrap things up at the end with the submission of artifacts and the importance of it. Okay, so we're going to move on to the first part of it. What I wanted to draw your attention to is the fact that we were able to make these projects available to you through some very specific funding. So we were able to draw from experiential learning, specialist high skills major, cooperative education, Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, and of course, we were able to draw from some funds from student success. And so when you read the application and as you're working through all of this, you start to see some explicit connections to any of these programs, which we're going to briefly explain. By all means, it helps us in terms of reporting back to the ministry that we've spent the money for the purpose for which it was intended. Because while we're giving you the money to do your projects, we still have to report back to the ministry that we use the money to support our specialist high skills major program. And that's and that's how we were able to make these funds available to you. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Frank, who's going to tell you a little bit about experiential learning, specialist high skills major, co-op, and the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program. So Frank.
So all of your projects
sharing this document with us.
Make wonderful connections to experiential learning and some of the work programs that I'm going to share with you in a minute here. And it might be to specific skills and knowledge, industry skills and knowledge that they're gaining, information about industry and careers. It's important that we make that career life planning connection, and important not only from a budgeting, and that's where the money's coming from, so that's what we have to show that connection, but also in terms of just their career life planning, and it's important. So the first is SHSM, which is Specialist High Skills Major. The majority of these programs or all of these programs are all high school programs, and we're trying to make the connection with elementary in terms of our Pathways Careers teachers, who you may have already seen in the schools, and they're really trying to get these high school programs out and that information out to So SILCSAW High Skills Major is an industry-specific certification where students earn it's a grade 11, 12 program where students will earn on a diploma if they complete a specific bundle of courses, and as well as some industry training and certification. So it's really industry specific. Arts and culture, nonprofit. We have 7 of them currently running in our high schools, and they vary with the different high schools. Also a co-op element. So if they meet all those criteria, they get a red seal. And more importantly, they really, what the whole program is about is making their high school education more relevant. So the quicker in elementary we can make the connection to their career path and understanding where they're going in terms of their career, then you know, the more important these programs can be to them, and keeping the more importantly, it keeps their high school experience more engaging and keeps it more relevant for them. So that's SHISM. Cooperative education, I'm sure many of you have heard of, which is where students are out of school, they're in industry, in the community, wherever it may be, and they're experiencing some type of workplace and earning credit for that experience. So 2 credit where they're out half the day, they earn 2 credits of high school, or in the case of a 4 credit co-op, they're out for the entire day. So they spend 6 hours a day at work, and they're earning 4 credits. And then usually if it's an apprenticeable trade, that they would be signed up in OYAP, Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program. And that's a program where students are actually earning their hours towards their certification in whatever trade it may be. And usually that involves working 7,000 to 8,000 depending on the trade hours. And so their co-op and their hours in co-op, and some students will take it in grade 11 and 12, would actually contribute to their earning their apprenticeship. And there's no cost to them, and we do all that for them. And so it's a perfect transition going right from high school directly to their job or to their work where they're already signed on as an apprentice, and in many cases leaving high school with their level 1 apprenticeship, which means a substantial pay, and they're already well along their way in gaining the red seal in that trade.
Okay, thank you so much, Frank. So what does that mean to you? That means that whenever you are, when you're working through your projects, wherever you can draw those connections between, an authentic learning task to a particular trade or a pathway destination, maybe doing some career exploration as you're working on these things, you'll know better because you know your projects a little bit better. Whenever you can do those things, then that's very helpful in terms of helping us to justify providing these funds for these projects. Okay, and I think if we go in with that mindset, then then the students will see the direct connections between what they're doing and real life, authentic sort of jobs and tasks. Okay, so moving forward, many of you participated in the STREAM workshops. But I wanted to make sure that we had a decent understanding of what the board means in terms of STREAM. So in terms of how we define it, it's the faith-filled integration of authentic learning tasks that are focused on science, technology, religion, engineering, the arts, and mathematics to solve a relevant problem through a design thinking approach. Most of your projects are focused around the design thinking approach, and most of your projects are also hitting multiple subject areas. I want us to think about STREAM in terms of process separate little packages, separate little packages. Okay, so that's a definition of STREAM. And in terms of the reporting template, I'm going to go through this piece. You will all get a copy of your very own reporting template that we will need to have completed before the end of the school year. And we'll be asking you to just provide us with some information. be aware that the information you're providing us will help us in terms of reporting back the financials and reporting back both to the ministry and to the board the amazing work that you're going to be doing. I want you to know that this slide deck is also going to be a great artifact for you to use at your school to showcase the work that you've done. You could always post a link to your slide deck on your school website. You could use it for open houses, curriculum lights, all kinds of things like that. Okay, so it is a multi-purpose tool that I think will be very useful to you. So you're going to have your cover sheet, and I'm going to come out of presentation mode because to make things a little bit easier, what we've done, what we're doing with the slide deck is providing you some information on the margins, okay, so that you know what to put on the actual slide deck, okay? So that way it's sort of a step-by-step of what to include. We've set up the title slide this way, but by all means, if you want to personalize it and brand it according to your school and according to your project, go for it. We've just sort of given you, we've given you a template to work with. And basically what we need to have is, the school, principal's name, the teachers involved, and the title of the project. Wherever possible, please make sure that you're adding, include pictures, video, anything that you sort of collect as part of the project or part of the process of the project that that you think might be of interest. Okay. Now, on the first slide, we are asking you to consider. We're asking you to consider who the learner is, briefly outline and describe the project, talk to us briefly about how the funding was used. Again, you want to include things like pictures and links to websites, blogs, whatever it is that you've used in order to curate the information or the work that you're collecting. I'm going to move on. And again, you'll notice on the margins, okay, or on the periphery, what you're going to see is just some more information to help tease things out for you. There's a link over here on what makes a good artifact. There's some information over here guiding you along the path of what the global competencies are and, the types of learners that you might be working with. Okay. Moving on to the next slide, we're asking you questions like who are your community partners? What role did the community partners play in the development and implementation of the project? And how did you meet the proposed criteria of the project? Again, you're going to be including things like pictures, documents, whatever you want to help curate the work that you've done. Okay. Moving on to the next slide, we're asking you questions around instructional strategies, any assessment practices, measuring evidence of student impact, asking you how you were able to measure impact on student achievement, engagement, and well-being. Okay, you've all pretty much included all of this information in your proposal. This is now just sort of providing us with a final report of how you achieved everything that you put in your proposal. Okay, next slide here asks you to tell us a little bit about impact on your students and what's the data that you collected to prove it, maybe some future reflections, and again, include pictures and artifacts from it. Okay, now in terms of artifacts, this is just the slide that says, these are the types of things that you might include in your slide deck. And again, what's great is from year to year that we've done this project, we're able to collect these artifacts from the school, and they become exemplars for other schools who've maybe never done something like this. And again, I think it's really good stuff for you to have to showcase the work that you're going to be doing on this project. Okay.
If I could just add, we're hopeful that we're going to have a co-op student who's working with half-time with a community partner and half-time with us at the board. And part of the project is going to be, the student's responsibility is going to be some marketing side of things. So you may be able to send the student to your schools during your projects, throughout your projects, to help with collect some of those artifacts, whether it be pictures or video. They're going to be working on videos and marketing stuff for us, social media, that kind of stuff for us. So being able to assist you in putting together those artifacts. I'll be in contact with you, and we'll try to get the student out to the student or students out to your school to help with that.
Okay, and when you get your individual slide deck, you'll get a contact information for each one of us, and and we'll put together a way for us to be able to communicate with you and provide you with any support that you might need. One thing that you need to keep in mind, if you included in your proposal, for example, you wanted to do STEM, you wanted to engage STEM minds to do design thinking workshops. What you need to know is that we've got a team here, your PCTs actually, who are trained in future design school, and they know the process of design thinking, and they can actually do training for students, they can do training for teachers, and they will be able to provide you with certificates of participation in this that are labeled the Future Design School, because that's the kind of training that they're going through right now. Yeah, great for portfolios and IPPs. I mention that because any money that you would have spent engaging an outside partner in that particular piece of your project, you don't have to spend, okay? You can ask us and we can arrange for that to happen for you, so that the money you would have spent, you could spend on other aspects of your project, okay? So that's kind of meant to be a money saving option for you that I want you to keep in your back pocket, okay? So I am going to, before I go on, could I just ask everybody to just double check to make sure that your mic is muted. You just hover your mouse in the bottom left corner of the screen, and a microphone should pop up. If it's not, if it doesn't have a red line through it, then please make sure to mute your mic, because it's a little difficult for us to hear each other. Okay, thank you very much. I'm gonna slide on over, and Kevin is going to take it from here.
So this is just a review of what was already posted on the website, where you might have filled up your application and read some of the preliminary information about it. This experiential learning page on the website outlines something that the ministry has really been pushing. Experiential learning takes all types of forms. It can be in the classroom, it can have guest speakers, field trips, and so on and so on. But whenever that happens, a lot of the participation is where the focus is, and not as much on the sort of the, instead, this is the what, and not as much emphasis is often placed on the so what and the now what. So we're encouraging students, it's student-centered, to really think about what these experiences are going to mean for them in their future, in their discernment of future careers, perhaps. And actually, I don't know if you had a chance to scroll down when you did the application, but these prompts are actually helpful too. It's generic, and it has to do with experiential learning, K to 12 really. They can kind of look at maybe some of these who am I and what are my opportunity questions, be more relevant for the really young ones, but definitely going into 6, 7, 8, they can start to think about these questions as well as they go through experiential learning cycles. So don't just participate, but also reflect and apply. I think that's the message across the province right now that schools are getting. So that's the experiential learning cycle. It's tied very closely to education for life planning and the four-step inquiry process. Who am I? Who do I want to become? What are my opportunities, and what is my plan? So that's something we're hoping that students are going to be able to do, and also document in their portfolios, as we said just a bit earlier. So that's kind of to do with the artifacts and the reporting of evidence of the project and what you've done. You'll notice that past projects are already posted on that website we were just looking at, and that we're going to add you guys to the archive once you're done. So you'll be part of that sort of legacy. This next slide has to do with the conversation about how to track your spending. Every school project is going to get one of these personalized for your school and your project title. And what's going to happen is that this is going to follow. You're going to notice that there are 4 tabs for transportation. Let it know it's going, okay. For transportation, for teacher release, okay, like that. For materials, you just get to scroll down a little bit for each one. You see these tables here, and for fees. Okay. So those are the 4 categories for spending. But the front is your summary page. On that summary page, here's some really good news. You're going to see some information that will be helpful to you, the rationale for each of the spending categories. Each of the 4 are summarized here. And you're going to see these tabs with, these cells with money, and you're going to see this fund center. This is the information that's going to help us understand, if you have an expense, this is the budget code basically for all. You notice that it's the same for all of them with some slight variations for transportation costs and for resources and materials, okay? On this summary page, okay, all you're going to need to do, all the elementary schools will receive $2,000. So that's the number that you're going to see here on your specific budget chart. And what you're doing is making a plan. Now, this doesn't have to be written in stone. If it doesn't follow the plan exactly, that's okay. But this is basically your projection of just about how much, and it might be different from your original projection when you put in your application, because I know that the amounts that we were able to give to all the schools weren't necessarily exactly what everybody asked for, okay? So this might just be a little bit of a customization of that.
Those yellow squares, they're not linked in any way. So it's just a quick initial breakdown of that $2,000 budget into those 4 categories, which can change, as you'll see.
Yep. So say you wanted to spend on the 4 categories equally. Now this you might have an area of focus. You might have spent more on the fees for community partners or something. I don't know. Okay. But what happens is if you put that in, you put 250 in each of the categories, and then in the back tabs, it automatically populates here. So you know what your projected amount is for each category at the top here, okay? And now that's due January 17th, I believe, that you just give us that breakdown, that yellow section here. That's all you have to do on this front page. And then as your expenses actually do happen, okay, very simple, all you have to do is go to this expenditure details purple chart for each category. So if it's a transportation cost and you have to pay for a bus, okay, what was the date of your trip? Okay, what was the purpose of the trip, and what was the cost of the bus? Okay, now our bursar, we have a bursar here named Louisa. She's going to come in just a couple of secs. She might have some other information to provide, but she's definitely going to be a quarterback for this. So, often, schools will order buses, so it isn't anything sort of out of the ordinary that way. All you're doing is basically tracking how many of your bus trips had to do, maybe it was one, right? Had to do with your project. For teacher release, same thing, teachers have different reasons to be off. You're just sort of documenting the supply days that you're using specifically for this project, and we just want to keep track of the job numbers. So this is really just a tracking form, and what's good about that is, so let me just put in an imaginary release. So the date is maybe 01, what is this, 06, 07, 20, okay, and maybe this was release time for release for EL or screen visit. I don't know, it's called screen visit. Okay, so visit. And Louisa's here beside me. This is Louisa Coquin. So she is our bursar, and she will be able to help school teams with this. So I just entered release time for screen visit. Now, it'd be helpful to just, you don't have to give a whole treatise here, but if you just mention like for the teacher, so if it's Mr. or Mrs. Carter or whatever, okay? And then the cost, which is typically $270 a day for a teacher, correct? Yeah. And then there will always be a job number as well, okay? So then what happens is that cost, okay, shows up right here. That's an expense. And now you'll notice that I went over my budget. So, you might want to budget for if there's a release day that's needed, maybe that'll be a little bit higher, obviously. Now, if you go over budget in a particular category, it's not a big deal. You might change your plans or whatever, but this is really just to track. Keep this consistent. It's not a big deal if that happens, but what the overall amount should be is, so you've already spent $270 and you've got a $1,000 budget. You guys will have $2,000, but you'll see that so you still have $730 left overall in your total.
So when you complete each of those tabs at the bottom, it automatically links to the summary sheet, the first link.
Yep. So this is, it might look like a busy spreadsheet, but actually it's quite simple to use. Once you can just get the hang of this is where the line by line costs happen, is in the back tabs like this, and then the summary will just populate on its own. You don't have to do a whole lot. Okay. Are there any questions about this budget chart? Excellent. Okay. Now, all of you will get a budget chart. I'm just going to show you this first, because this is what all the school projects are going to, where they're going to be housed. This is just a hyperdoc with all the school project titles. And basically, each of these, I'll just use, if you don't mind, Christ the King, if you're here. I'll use yours as an example. So it'll look very similar to what you just saw. The only difference being that it will be labeled with your school and your project title on it. There might have been one or two where the title we weren't quite sure about, but you know, this is basically what it looks like. So you've got your amounts, you all have the same amount. Here's where you put your projections. Now, the reason why I brought this sheet to your attention as well is because the second link where Louise's name's on it as well includes this page right here. These are some budget guidelines. So if you're lost or you're stuck, it's kind of like a manual, I guess. So that, you know, there are 4 spending categories. Release time should be straightforward. Transportation should be straightforward. Paying fees, there might be a couple of different things to consider, but it's all going to be outlined here if you have any concerns. Hopefully it will all make sense to you when you have a look at this, but if you do have any questions, then Louisa can certainly support you. Do you have anything specific you want to add?
So the secondary panel is quite familiar with the admin one. However, the elementary schools, the secretaries are not very familiar with the admin one. It's not something that you typically use. So an admin one is basically requesting reimbursement from us to your school. So for instance, there might be a fee, a presenter, or a bus that you invoice that you decide to pay out of your own bank account, and then you want reimbursement for it. So you would fill out an admin one, and your secretary should have this form on hand. If you're able to print it for her, and perhaps just say use when, you know, when our school pays for something that has to do with our school proposal. Same thing goes for, on a different note, for instance, if the principal decides to use their P card, and we need to reimburse the principal's P card for expenses. So again, they would have to send us a copy of the receipts and a copy of the P card statement and log, and we would have those charges reversed so that they wouldn't show up on your GSB. So anything that the school pays for, we will have to reimburse. It will take longer. If you are creating a purchase requisition where you're ordering materials, you do have access to creating a purchase requisition number with the funds that we have provided. Your secretary will have access to that fund center. Any purchases over $500 should be through a purchase rec. And I think that's, yeah, I think it's pretty, it'll be kind of a work in progress where you will go through it, and as you come to a certain obstacle with the financing or with the invoicing, you might have to call me, which is fine. My contact information is there, and the secretaries can feel free to call me at any time or email me.
I just wanted to add, in completing the admin one, it asks for the budget number. They can get that right from the chart, right?
Yeah,
from their budget
and it's
chart.
pretty consistent.
Yeah.
It's the 104879.
That's where all of your SILCSAW, or sorry, that's where all of your proposal will be charged to, is to 104879. So that budget code should be clearly on any document that you send to the board that you want reimbursed or that you want paid. Same thing for release time. You would use 104879. Your budget code.
Yes. So then just some dates to keep in mind. We're planning that by January 17th, 2020, you will have your budgets. Each school team will have their budgets, and they'll be able to provide the projections of the spending that they're planning on that yellow section here that I just showed you. And then on June 1st, that's when we're hoping that all of your line by line spending, your expenses have been outlined and completed. So all your spending has been exhausted by, or planned to be exhausted by June 1st, so that we can have a comfortable cushion before we have to report to the ministry. This breakdown here is pretty much aligned with what you would have seen on your application in terms of the spending categories and what's allowed and not allowed. This comes from the ministry as well. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask our team. And I think that is it, except for, I think I already showed you that sheet, right? Yeah.
So that June 1st deadline, that means that all the invoices would be here at the board by that date. So if you have a field trip or something in June happening after the deadline, we need to know about it.
Yeah.
So we need a quote or something from the transportation company.
Okay. Any questions about the budget? Okay.
Quick. Okay, so so basically, I know it seems like an awful lot, and it may even sound a little bit overwhelming. I'm going to stop the share right now. It may seem like it's a little bit overwhelming. Take it day by day. If you have any questions, you've got the four of us here as your team to support you at the school level, especially when it comes down to maybe some of the financial stuff. If you run into any problems, by all means, reach out, and we will help you with that. And if you need anybody to come in and provide in-servicing or any of those things like that, training, in-servicing, you have any questions, you want to make a radical change to your project because something's not working the way you'd like it to work, by all means, reach out, and we will be able to help you with that. You should be receiving within the next day or two, at least by Monday, a slide deck with your template and any other information that might be relevant to you to help support you with your work. The big elephant in the room right now is if there is job action that commences on Monday, are we allowed to continue to do this? At this stage of the game, I can't tell you with any clarity what the answer to that question is. I know that we have some questions into OWECTA at this point to see what we are allowed to do and what we are not allowed to do. And we're going to take it day by day. And hopefully there'll be a positive outcome to all of this. Okay, so what we wanted to do is make sure at least we gave you this information so that if we're moving ahead full steam, we can move ahead full steam. And if there are any obstacles to that, we will then provide you with updates and let you know what the status is of the project in general. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Yes? Okay, I know a lot of information. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Thank you so much. Okay, so before we sign off, I really do want to thank you all. You've put a lot of hard work into this. You've really thought things through, and we appreciate all of your efforts to support students and student achievement. And on behalf of Kevin, Louisa, and Frank, I want to thank you for taking the time to be a part of this webinar today. Okay, thank you all very much, and we look forward to your projects. Oh, one last piece. In setting these deadlines the way we've set them, it does give us a little bit of a window to be able to input the data that we need to input before the end of the school year, because the ministry expects these reports to be submitted by the end of June. Okay, so that's kind of why we have those deadlines. Okay, and I like that D. Loriero has zoomed into us from his car. Uber cool. All right, have a good evening, everybody. Take care and God bless.